I'm going to start with some questions. First, welcome for coming to this session. This is the last session that I have at Cisco Live. So after this, I'm free. I can enjoy the party together with you guys. Earlier today, I had a session that was focused on infrastructure as code. How do I automate workflows with Cisco DNS Center APIs? This session will focus on how I automate the workflows that I create with different programming, basically with different automation tools. So I am not advertising you should use Jenkins, you should use the concepts that I'm going to propose today. How many people have Cisco DNS Center in production? Thank you. How many people use Jenkins for anything or a CI/CD pipeline? Perfect. Do you have any automation workflows today that you developed either Terraform, Ansible, Python SDK for DNS Center? Thank you. So the session today will focus on how to automate all of these different tools, basically the workflows that you created, and make it easier for us. So I think we'll probably get started. It is 2 o'clock. My background, I'm a network engineer. How many network engineers we have here? Okay, do we have developers that are only developers, not sometime developers, sometime network engineers? Okay, so we have some developers, I know. How many are developers and sometimes doing network engineering? I think we all are kind of in the same way. So we need to learn different tool sets, different skills, but at the end of the day, I am a network engineer for over 20 years. So those skills are still very important. I'm using software APIs to manage network infrastructure for the past 7 years. That's when I started to focus only on this. How do I use APIs to manage different platforms? Even before we had Cisco DNS Center. For the past 4 years, I joined the business unit and I'm the senior technical marketing engineer focused on Cisco DNS Center APIs and integrations. A lot of what you are going to see today are libraries that I championed, that I worked with developer organization. The Jenkins open source integration I'm going to share with you today, and the pipelines are work that, again, I consider is very important for us, all of us as network engineers. So how many of you do help with maintenance windows? And when are those maintenance windows? Is it noon, evening, Saturday night live? That's what it happens. So I'm going to share with you where we can actually do some scheduling, some of these automation tools to make our life easier. Because I'll share with you an example. Years ago, when I was a systems engineer, I was working with a customer, and they had a mandate that every configuration change, no matter if it's adding a switch, configure a VLAN, must happen in a maintenance window that was starting Friday evening, and for critical was Saturday evening. So it is very difficult for us network engineers to operate in that way. At 7 p.m. Friday evening, they would log in the network and start to configure network infrastructure. I'm going to show you how we can automate a lot of these workflows, and they will complete much faster with far more accuracy than I could do it by hand, and we will have full visibility in all the executions. So in that way, we would know exactly what happened, when happened, and if something went wrong. Very important, please join this WebEx room. This presentation has, I lost track of how many slides, but too many to present in the next 45 minutes. So I'm going to share the full presentation with you, the entire PDF with the hidden slides. If you cannot use WebEx, please ping me and I will share with you the PDF of this presentation. I will share with you videos of the recordings of different pipelines executions. And I will share with you also links that could be useful for you where you can find sample code for about everything, including all the libraries that we have published for Cisco DNS Center. So we are going to start with only one slide for the Cisco DNS Center platform. Then we are going to dive in the Jenkins open source integration and why it's important for us as network engineers. We'll continue with a number of pipelines. I will share with you only probably during the presentation, probably 3 pipelines, but I have 5 or 6 part of the presentation. And you will be able, if you are interested, I can share all the recorded demos for all of those pipelines executions. At the end, we'll go through some of the developer resources and summary. I will share with you throughout the presentation in little notes or bullet points what I learned by using this tool. Because I use Jenkins because in my organization, the business unit, we use Jenkins for software development. So it was very easy for me to learn first from some developers that are using Jenkins day in, day out, and also validate, hey, is this pipeline even making sense? Is it, sort of like what you are doing when you are actually doing software development, software builds with Jenkins. So Cisco DNA Center platform, and this is a very busy slide. What I would like you, when you look at this slide, start from the top. So, well, the pointer is not going to work very well, but start from the top. No matter which customer vertical you are, if you are healthcare, if you are in, let's say, retail, if you are manufacturing, transportation, when you are looking at your use cases, what you want to do with Cisco DNA Center platform, you need to identify what are the resources available for you. So let's say if we want to automate provisioning of network infrastructure on a manufacturing floor, we are going to look at infrastructure as code use cases, and then we have the option to look at what tools are available. Cisco DNA Center has a Python SDK, Ansible collection, Terraform provider. I published this week an integration, an open source integration between GitHub and GitLab and Cisco DNA Center. And of course, we have Jenkins. And I just realized when I was reviewing my slides for this presentation, Jenkins is kind of core in everything we do from infrastructure as code perspective. And then what are your options? Okay, we can call Cisco DNA Center REST APIs. I can call reports. I can get reports through APIs to collect a large amount of data from Cisco DNA Center, or I have the option to consume event notifications. All of these are going to call and use Cisco DNA Center features, network insights, capabilities, automation workflows, UI features. All of this can be consumed through APIs. And we are going to do some of that today during the session. Of course, there are so many other use cases that you can develop on top of some of the ideas that I'm going to share with you. This session is not about how to write the perfect CI/CD pipeline. This session is to give you some ideas of why you should look at an automation tool to use to run basically your automation workflows. So why is this important? So how many feel in this way? When I started on this path about 7 years ago, I was kind of the only one in my team. And I started to work on scripts, and I was super happy. And then I started to share some of them with other network engineers, with some of my peers. And but then we could realize I was using a Mac, other people use a Windows, maybe you guys prefer Linux. Then also, I provided them a sample code, and then 6 months later, they are still using the same source code because they didn't know I changed. I have new features, I improved my code. Libraries would drift, so we wouldn't have visibility. It's very easy to see drifting between development environments, and the execution of those scripts would be very different. Those applications, the outcome of those applications would be very different. Plus, not very good visibility. If we are an enterprise organization working this way, I would not know what application did what to my network infrastructure. So how about if we use an automation platform? And that's what Jenkins will be using in this case, an automation platform. How about if I use an automation platform that integrates with GitHub for all the source code, for all the intent configurations, and we all run all the automations on the same platform? I can run, if I am this guy running basically a script on Jenkins, you guys using the same server, the same automation platform, again, it doesn't have to be Jenkins, could be any CI/CD pipeline, could be any runbook automation environment, any platform that you want. We will all run exactly the same, with the same environment, with the same code, same templates, exactly the same libraries. And the outcomes will always be the same, and I will have very good reporting on what's going on. I will know if something broke, why it broke, and how to fix it. I will know each of us when we ran a specific workflow, I will have visibility on what happened. So why use GitOps, Git operations for, let's say, configurations, specifically for configurations for inventories? Because we already use Git for our source code. I shouldn't use, basically, write my application. If I want to share it with you, which you will get access to, of course, you have access to the public repo, You have visibility in that. But why should I use Git for everything, like configuration? Because then we all use the same templates. We are all going to use the same network settings, the same software-defined access code, the configuration. Then also I can go back in time to find out what's changed. So let's take a look of some of these changes. I can configure, and you are going to see in a demo, I'm going to collect inventory from Cisco DNA Center, all the devices managed from Cisco DNA Center, and earlier I was running this manually. Now I'm going to automate the process. I will have an application that collects this inventory constantly, and if I have devices that me as a network engineer, I removed from the infrastructure, I made an error, I deleted some devices, I will find out from the Git history, I would go back and find out why now am I missing 2 devices that have been managed by Cisco DNA Center. Are they retired? Are they still in production? Maybe they are still in production, but just not managed. Also, it's very important for compliance. I may need some time to go back a year ago and identify what software version was I running, who made a configuration change, what happened. Now we have a vulnerability, we have a problem to address. So it's very important to have this history that GitHub or a Git server, again, it doesn't have to be GitHub. Any software version control tool will provide you the same features. So Jenkins defines themselves, this is what they call themselves, an automation server for building, testing, and delivering and deploying software. Well, we kind of deploy software, it's infrastructure as code, but we don't have the ambitions to say, well, we are building software. So I'm going to use Jenkins for the automation server capabilities. It's very rich, and we will use those options that Jenkins provides for me to schedule jobs, trigger jobs, and simplify my experience as a network engineer and your experience potentially and your team's workflows. So Cisco DNA Center, together with Jenkins or a CI/CD pipeline, will be used for automating our scripts, our applications that provision network infrastructure. So that's what we are going to do. I will have a much better experience because I integrate with GitHub. Every time I'm building a pipeline, you are going to see all of us will build a pipeline in the development environment exactly the same way. So the outcomes are going to be very consistent for all of us. So to get started with Jenkins, it's pretty easy. When I started, I actually installed Jenkins, the free one, because I don't do any production, on my laptop. And then, now I have actually a server. So it's pretty easy to get started. You need to install, if you do it on your laptop, Docker, you need to install Jenkins. If you do it on a server, there are maybe a couple of other steps, depends on your operating system. But all the information about Jenkins, how to manage, security features on Jenkins are available. They do a very good job to document everything. So when I log in Jenkins, on my laptop and you are on my server, and you are going to see in a moment, this is what you get. I can manage Jenkins, all the preferences, credentials, GitHub token, everything that I want to use in my automation workflows could be managed through there. I can install plugins. There are a lot of different features that are available in Jenkins that could be managed from there. I have views, because in my environment, I have some developer, like, hey, I'm building something, it's not quite ready for demos, and I have an ops view. Those are workflows that I actually use in my lab constantly, either for demos or I use them to configure my network infrastructure. We have the build queue, which tells me what is running, what builds, because Jenkins could run multiple pipelines at the same time, and if I use multiple agents, I could scale for very large environments. And then I have here visibility on what this pipeline, GitHub sync, and we'll do a review of this pipeline. When it ran, was it successful? How long time did it take? In this case, it was 27 seconds. So how to build a pipeline? I'll take you through the steps to build a pipeline, and then I'll share with you how to skip through all of these steps. I will share with you a pipeline template that I use to build a few of the pipelines that I'm going to share with you today that you are going to see demos. So do you feel that this is kind of a good description? If I'm starting a new project today that I want to do some development of a use case on Cisco DNA Center, this is what I do. I create a Python environment, I download some code from GitHub, I install the libraries, and then I provide some parameters and I run it. Is that what we do? Or basically, in a nutshell, probably those are good enough. But there are some problems. I do this every time I start a new project. And also sometimes I build this Python environment, I don't touch it for 6 months, and then I need to reinstall libraries, update, or sometimes I forget to update the libraries, and then I have a new version of DNA Center, I'm trying to use an older library, and things don't work quite well. So there is a better way. If I use Jenkins, I can build this pipe environment every time I'm building a pipeline. So I don't need to do anything manual, it will do it for me. So it will do it always for all of us. If we are all of us using the same Jenkins server, every time I'm building a pipeline would be exactly the same. Now, I'll share with you, latest versions could be tricky sometimes. Because recently I had a pipeline that I used for literally probably a year, and suddenly it broke. Well, it broke because one of the libraries, the latest version of the library that I was using, lib3, had a problem with the libraries that some of the other code and libraries that I was using. However, to identify what's changed was very easy because I could see from Jenkins what library version I had, what was downloaded, what's different between the last time it ran successfully, the time that it was not successful, identify very quickly what was the library version that created this problem. So even if you are using the latest versions, and if something doesn't go quite well, you quickly identify what's changed. But you can definitely specify what versions of the libraries you want to use. So to create a very basic pipeline is very simple. We are going to basically provide a name. I'm going to decide that I want to create a pipeline. We are going to look only at basic declarative pipelines. Those are the easiest ones and the most basic ones, but those are the ones they will work very well for our automation workflows, for network automation. And then basically, I have the option if I want to copy from an existing pipeline. If I already have a pipeline, I can copy and continue from there. But in this case, let's continue by developing the pipeline. So a Jenkins file is the description of all the stages and steps that are required to execute this pipeline. This is where I will define the agent means where is this execution, the workflow, where will it run? And I could have one agent or multiple agents. In my case, I'm going to use a Docker image because this is a Python project. I'm going to use the Docker image, the Python latest version. I could specify the version if I need to. Then I have some stages and steps. This is where I'm going to execute specific actions. And then I have the option to post to decide what I do at the end. Very important, these stages and steps are shell commands. If I want to run a Python application, I can run it from here, Python and the name of the application. If I want to install basically the files, the libraries for Python, I can do pip install and the requirements file. And you are going to see in the pipeline, this is what I'm going to do. But this is already a pipeline. It is the very basic one. And if I run it, if I build it, it doesn't do anything. It builds a Python environment, the Docker container, brings it up, and it will destroy it at the end. It doesn't really do anything yet, but this is the first step. It's sort of like, how quickly can I get to the hello with Jenkins? And this is good enough. All I need to do now is actually add some actions, some stages, some steps to do what I need this pipeline to do. So we are going to now continue by building this. So this is where, in stages and steps, I looked at what are common steps that I need to do as a developer. I need to basically define some environment variables. Those are credentials for platforms, could be GitHub credentials, anything that is important for the execution of this Python script. Then I need to basically build the Python environment. I need to pull or clone code from GitHub. I need to install the libraries for Python. And then I'm going to execute the Python application. So it's pretty straightforward. We do similar steps if I want to build a virtual environment to run an application. If I'm intending to run an Ansible playbook or a Terraform plan, these steps would be different because I don't have to install Python libraries. I need to install Ansible or install different, basically, let's say Terraform, to download Terraform. So let's take a quick look. This is where we start to add features. I can have actually a conditional in Jenkins. I can check, do I have this repo already in this container? And if I do, I'm going to basically update the repo. If I don't, I'm going to clone the repo from GitHub. So it's very easy now. You can see with Jenkins, I can script what this pipeline would do for me. So what this will do, now I have the GitHub repo with the application code and potentially the files, the intent configurations that I need. Next, I'm going to pip install requirements. This is what we do from terminal. If I need to install all the libraries for Python, this is what I do. And then I always recommend, I learned this the hard way, check your work. It's very important, and this is easy. It's not hard. I'm going to do pip Python version, pip list. I need to know this information because I need to know if something went wrong, like what I told you, a library that was a little bit of a problem for me. I need to know what did I do that was different this time comparing with last time. And then I can even list the files that I downloaded from GitHub. It's not hard. All of these are shell commands that probably it's the best practice to do anyway. But if I do this manually, I may sometimes skip. It's much easier with Jenkins because this will be done once this pipeline is ready. All of us can use it in the same way. Here, I'm going to actually run the application. And in this case, again, it's a pipeline that runs Python applications. But if I use Ansible, I would run an Ansible playbook. Could be very similar from a basically shell command. And at the end, I'm going to say everything completed successfully. So here is where I told you I realized that after I started building few pipelines, why wouldn't I create a template that makes my work easier? Because at the end of the day, I always create a Python environment. I always install the libraries. I always download code from GitHub. I always download maybe some variable files from GitHub. And I always have to run the application. So why wouldn't I, since these steps are mostly the same, why wouldn't I create a template that I could easily reuse to create a new pipeline? And some of the pipelines I'm going to share with you today are built exactly in the same way. So I created some environment variables that will change for every pipeline. If the application is different, if the GitHub repo is different because I'm running a different automation workflow, all I need to update is this, the top. I will populate with the correct GitHub repo, the right name for the pipeline that I want to use for logging. I will update the application name, and I'm pretty much done. Because after that, when Jenkins runs, it will use the new source code and the new files that are required for Jenkins. So it doesn't get any easier. And you're going to see a couple of pipelines I built exactly the same way. It took me 3 minutes to build a new pipeline. I don't have to create everything from scratch. So let's look at the first pipeline. So this one will run every 15 minutes. I know it's aggressive. Every 15 minutes collects the inventory from Cisco DNA Center, collects information regarding physical location of the device, role of the device. I could add tags. Somebody asked in an earlier session, I could add information regarding, I have software versions, non-compliant state for devices, and publishes this to GitHub. This is where we add more features. So with each pipeline, I'm going to share with you additional features that would make your life easier, that will help you. So here at the top, we can see triggers. So triggers means, when do I want to run this pipeline? Because I could always run a pipeline manually. Here, I run it now, build. But the life would be better if Saturday night, instead of doing maintenance windows and doing configuration, we can watch Saturday Night Live, the real show, and have Jenkins do the work for us. And at the end, we just check to see if everything was successful. Or maybe from Jenkins, I can even get notifications in WebEx or text messages. Hey, something went wrong, so you better look at this. So this is a schedule, and I have other schedules. I can do it what day of the week, how many times do I want, first Friday of the month. And I have other triggers. I can make an API call to trigger. I can have GitHub Actions to trigger a pipeline. I have a new update on a repo. I want to run the pipeline. Or we could do it even when a Jenkins pipeline completed successfully. That will trigger the execution of another pipeline. So this is what I updated. You can see here, I provided a Jenkins, basically the GitHub repo for the automation. I provided a device inventory name. Basically, this is the application that I want to run. And other than that, my basically username for GitHub. And once I've done this, this is ready. I have only like 3 lines to update for this pipeline comparing with the template. I can review all the steps. This, again, you are going to get the full details from this presentation. But quickly, I can review all the steps. Does this look good for the new pipeline that I built? And basically, I'm ready. I'll share with you another aspect that might help some of you. So I know I'm not a developer, so when I write, if I want to know what happens, I do print. And that's not necessarily the right way. We should log information. If I log in my application, you can see here on the left-hand side in Python, I'm going to log information, login.info. Those messages, when the Python application runs, will be visible in Jenkins. So you have full visibility on everything that is going on with this pipeline. I have information about how many devices are not compliant, what files do I publish to GitHub. Everything that is important is visible now in Jenkins and helps me troubleshoot, helps me understand what step, if anything, failed, what happened. So ready for a quick demo? I think you had enough about me talking, right? So let's take a quick look. Here I have 13 devices. I'm going to log in Jenkins because I want you to see when you log in what you will see. So first I have the labs view, some work in progress, and then the ops view is what I use in my operations in my lab. And we can see this pipeline ran every 15 minutes. And from here, we can review quickly the configuration. I think it's important to go through all of these steps so you know how it looks. So next time when you log in Jenkins or some other runbook automation tool, you would be able to have, you would have very similar experiences. So you can see here, this is the pipeline and this is what I updated. Everything else is my standard pipeline template. That probably for some of you would be a very good start for lab work. We can see here that last time it ran was 2:59. It will run at 3:14. And my clock, when I recorded this demo, is 3:14. So it started running. And we can see everything that it does. It will download if it needs or build a Docker container. Then it will install code. It will download the code from GitHub. It will install the Python libraries. You can see here it installs everything, including the Cisco DNS Center SDK, and then it will run the application. If any one of you have access to this Jenkins server and you build this pipeline, it will do exactly the same. You don't need to do anything on your laptops. The experience as a network engineer is improved significantly because you don't need to install Python. You don't need to install anything. It's ready for you, and it will be exactly for all of us if we run this pipeline. So now we can go back to GitHub, and we can see none of these files have been updated because nothing changed from an inventory perspective. When I'm trying to commit these files, they have not changed comparing with 15 minutes ago since they were updated last time. So because of this, I can go to the history and find out, for example, when did I have a change. And we can see here that some devices have been deleted. I deleted 2 devices for this demo from Cisco DNS Center. This application identified that 2 devices are not managed by Cisco DNS Center, and I have that information. Later, when I added them back, 2 hours later, they were added back to the inventory. So in this way, it's very powerful because any network state could be anything that I collect from Cisco DNS Center. I have tracked the changes and when they change and what changed. So I don't need to do this manually. If I ask any one of you, when did you change your network settings at the site last time, would you know? Or when did you add last time 5 devices, or this device, when was managed, started to be managed by Cisco DNS Center? A year ago, a year and a half ago? We don't have that information. Using GitHub, we have this tracking, we have these capabilities built in the tool. So let's start to use it more for some of these configurations. So let's take a look at another integration. And this is a GitHub sync. I had earlier a GitHub synchronization with Terraform. Now I'm going to build it with Python and do additional things. So what if I have all the GitHub, basically in GitHub, all the CLI templates for profiles that I need to configure on my network infrastructure? I could have 100 templates, and if I have multiple Cisco DNA Center clusters, lab, and production, I want all of them to have exactly the same GitHub repos, basically the same CLI templates from the GitHub repos. So using this pipeline, I will actually download these templates from GitHub, but I will collect additional information. I will collect information like when was a template committed to GitHub, what changed, who committed this template, what's basically the diff on that template. So when I'm logging in Cisco DNA Center, I have exactly the same information that is available in GitHub. So let's take a look. This template was changed. For example, this NTP source was removed, and I basically added another loopback 0 source for the NTP. If I'm running this application, the GitHub app, basically integration app, then this is what I'm going to push to Cisco DNA Center. Information like this template was pulled from GitHub, the GitHub commit, who committed this template. Because not every network engineer maybe should commit templates to GitHub. I will have diff. We can see here the minus and plus what's changed. And then these are the comments that will be included in Cisco DNA Center and the content itself of the GitHub repo. And we'll do this for every template that you need to configure on Cisco DNA Center. So this is what it looks on DNA Center now. So do you think this information is available if you host your GitHub, basically in GitHub as being the single source of truth for all of your templates? Is this important to know when a template changed, who made the change, what was changed? Because if I use an automation tool to configure templates on Cisco DNA Center, it's a user Python. Who knows who's user Python? Could be Gabi, could be John, could be Timmy, could be Les. We don't know who ran that synchronization. But if Gabi updated a CLI template in GitHub, I need that information because that's the source of change. And with this kind of tooling, now I have this visibility. And I have it at scale. I don't need to ask you to update 100 templates across multiple DNA Center clusters every day to be sure that it's aligned between GitHub and Cisco DNA Center. So how did I build this pipeline? Well, exactly the same way. These are the same steps. It's a pretty straightforward application. I updated the source code where this application is and the application name. And that's it. So again, 3 minutes. Of course, I had to have the application, but to build the Jenkins pipeline, it's very easy. So this is the history. We can see this runs every night. Regardless if it's Friday, Saturday, every night it will run and synchronize templates from GitHub to Cisco DNA Center. And then I'm going to run this application. Again, we can look in the template editor. I'm going to make some changes. I have a GitHub project. I am going to delete a template. I'm the network engineer. I don't think, maybe I make an error. I'm not in the correct folder to delete a CLI template. And I'm going to update one of the templates. I'm going to delete the commit messages. So these are basically now updated on Cisco DNA Center. If I'm running this pipeline, it will basically undo everything that I did, but also give me full visibility. It will identify what was changed, and I will have this information available for me. So running this pipeline, we can see here, for example, I ran it on demand manually now. We can see again, it starts to download files, and there's something new here. I'm reusing, and we'll talk more about reusing. I'm not reinstalling these libraries again and again. I'm downloading the libraries once and reusing, they are cached, and also reusing if installed on the same container. So we can see here the information about the templates. We can see all the details from GitHub. So what this application will do, download the template from GitHub, identify if the template exists on DNA Center. If it's not, we'll update the information on DNA Center. We'll create a new template. If the template exists on DNA Center, it will verify if it's exactly the same as in GitHub. If it is, does nothing. If the template has been changed on DNA Center, it will override the template on DNA Center with the information from GitHub. And at the end, I have a report. This template was created and committed. This was changed. and I basically undid the change, and the other template did not change, so I did nothing with that one. So if I go back to GitHub project, now I have back the template that I deleted accidentally, or the change that I did to one of the templates was undone. So it's pretty easy in this way. If my intent is published on GitHub, because I know software versions, I know when a template was changed, I know when a template was deleted, I know when I have updates, now I can very easily go back and do exactly the same with a pipeline, with an automation tool, and update everything on Cisco DNS Center. So it's synchronized with my single source of truth. And this could be for everything: network settings, AAA, fabrics, any configuration on DNS Center, I can do exactly the same. So I have another one because I want to share another idea with you. How many of you have a good process to deploy something in production, in lab first, and then you go to production? Some. Is it easy to do it? It's manual? It is probably what we've always tried. We test and it looks good, and then we go in production. How about if I share with you I can automate this process? I'm going to test something first in lab and then in production, and Jenkins will help me with this kind of testing. And again, this is a very easy one. We can see here, I am deploying some configurations first to my lab device that I specify there, and then to the production devices. And we can see here I have a report for the lab that deployment was successful, and then I have a deployment report that in the lab, in production, was successful. So it's very easy. I have visibility. If it is working well, and this is very basic, I can add so many checks in lab to identify, did the routing come up, or whatever change I did a software upgrade, is the switch upgraded, performing correctly? I can do so many more checks in the lab before I go in production. But the automation workflow, the orchestration of testing first in the lab and then in production, can be simplified with Jenkins. And this is where something failed. So what happens if a stage fails in Jenkins? By default, all the subsequent stages would fail. So in this case, when I deployed these templates to the lab, they failed. And because of that, I didn't continue in production. So it's easy to see the value of an automation tool, orchestration tool, where now, yes, I could build exactly the same logic with Python or Ansible, but this does it for me. And also, if you guys use Jenkins, or you have access to this server, you would use these capabilities as they are building the orchestration tool in the CI/CD pipeline. So I'll start only quickly through this demo because I have very little time available, and I have a few more topics to cover. So let's start with this Jenkins pipeline. We can see this is my project, the lab, the production devices, the project name, and the template that I want to deploy. And then when this Jenkins pipeline will run, that's the information it's going to pull from GitHub. It is evening, during the maintenance window, and it starts to perform these tasks. And this is what's going on when we use Jenkins for software development. If the build of the entire package fails somewhere, that's when we realize, well, we need to look at some of the packages, something that we provided that may not be correct. So in this case, again, we can look at all the libraries being installed, and we are going to see first it will go to provision to configure the devices in the lab. So the lab deployed the templates is started. This application is the first one, and then I will go to continue in production. The best part is I have a report. These console files, what you see here is the console of Jenkins, are available for me. I can go back in time and identify what failed, why it failed. Maybe it's a library version, maybe it's a file that is missing from GitHub. So now it basically completed testing in the lab, and it will continue with production. So any questions while this demo continues? Oh, it's easy. It's interesting. At least it is interesting. Is it worthwhile for you guys to explore using platforms like this? Thank you. So I promise I'm going to give you another tip. So you already have seen in one of the pipelines that when I try to install the libraries, it says skipped, reusing information. So if I want to reuse libraries that I downloaded, they are already cached, it's exactly the same software version that I downloaded, I can do that by caching. But I also can reuse containers. So in that way, I don't need to reinstall all the libraries constantly. So this container is one of my work in progress. It might be next year when I present Jenkins. I'll try to update the session always with new pipelines. This is a container that you can see what does it do. Anybody can answer to me? What does it do? So it will install, it's a developer container that will install the Python SDK, Terraform, or Ansible. And no matter what playbook, Terraform plan, or Python application I want to run, it will run in this container. So just by reusing cache and reusing the container, I am saving time, about 23 seconds in running this build. So just for a simple fact, for example, if I'm reusing that information, it takes significantly less to have the container ready. Now, this doesn't mean a lot if I'm doing once, but if I build these jobs several times every hour, it adds up quite a bit. And especially if I'm looking at massive automations for some of the customers, these 23 seconds are important. So let's go to look at some of the developer resources. All the code, the DNA Center open source integration with Jenkins has been published. It was a project I worked with a developer organization, and it's how you get started with Jenkins. The pipelines that I shared with you today are part of this Jenkins, basically, automation folder in GitHub. So you have access to all the pipelines, all the automation workflows written in Python. And again, don't think only Jenkins and don't think only Python. Could be any CI/CD platform or automation platform, and it could be Python, Ansible, Terraform, or any other programming language if you need. And this is probably the most important resource, the GitHub organization for Cisco Enterprise Networking Programmability. This is where you are going to find about everything. You are going to find the Ansible modules, the Python SDK, the Terraform provider. This is all work that I have done in the last probably 2 years, 3 years, to add more and more resources to help you as network engineers or developers to get started. You have here information for software-defined access as code, report operations. I want to create reports with APIs, webhook receiver because I want to receive webhooks notifications from Cisco DNA Center, the Jenkins open source integration, the Splunk apps. We have a certified Splunk integration. The apps are hosted here. The GitHub and GitLab open source integration, compliance use cases. And there's probably more than this. So I highly encourage, when you start your next automation workflow, with or without Jenkins, start with this because you are going to find some information that will help you get started quicker. And these are some additional links I'll share with you in the presentation, but also in WebEx. So what Jenkins or a pipeline platform will do for us, simplify our network developers, network engineers' life. We need to partner with developers. I worked with developers in Cisco to validate the pipelines, to know, am I doing the correct work here? Is it, do I have any security concerns? Is it anything that I need to pay attention to? I will have visibility. We will know every time we run a workflow on this pipeline, on this platform, we will know what happened, who ran the workflow, was it successful or not. I had more sessions this week. This is the last one. If there is any content that is interesting for you, I can share with you the PDF in the WebEx room. Probably the first one today might be more interesting because I covered use cases for Python SDK, Terraform, or Ansible. I think that one probably would be useful for you as well. Very important, the surveys. This is how we learn, is this important? Is this useful? Do you want more of this content? Or totally like, nah, this is not my thing. I don't want to see this again. So please provide those feedbacks. You can provide feedback in the WebEx room, share your experience, share your work, questions about Cisco DNA Center, about Jenkins, about Cisco DNA Center APIs, or other integrations we have available. So thank you so much. It is very much appreciated. I know you have a lot of sessions, especially later in the day. We all get tired. You have a lot of options to attend sessions. It is a privilege to present to you. I hope you found this information interesting, and best of everything the remaining of this week. Thank you so much.